Hi, I'm Melissa Orlov. I help couples turn their relationships around when one or both of them has adult ADHD. You may not know yet if that applies to you. That's okay. Unlike kids with ADHD, the vast majority of adults with ADHD don't know they have it. But today, I want you to meet 3 couples who, not that long ago, were in the same place you're in now. Today, they're celebrating and sharing their stories with you because they want you to know that you too can turn your relationship around and make it special again.
I got the book, The ADHD Effect on Marriage, based on the recommendation of your therapist, and started reading the book, and I didn't get 50 pages before I was crying like a baby because it laid out every story from our marriage, and it was not just tears of memory and sadness of all the bad things that happened, but it was like, holy cow, you mean there's a reason.
The 3 things that stood out for most of my life were lack of any short-term memory. Somebody would say something to me, 30 seconds later, I'd forget it. It was as if I'd never been said. Impulsivity, I would shift from one thing to another, and agitation. Those are really the 3 that dominated. And that made life difficult for her because she never knew from day to day or even moment to moment what kind of behavior I might exhibit.
Mm-hmm. And I think with the impulsivity, it would be like all of a sudden he just had to get out of the house.
It was a scary time because this was a relationship I didn't want to lose. And things were not going the way that either of us wanted them to go. And we had tried the things that we already had known what to do, and it wasn't working.
I just became somebody, I hated myself. I mean, I just hated myself, and I hated the reaction that I had to him. I hated everything about me. So I think that I could change was probably the biggest thing.
I thought if I were ADHD, I certainly had it under control because I was organized and, I had a job and, all those things. And it wasn't until I was with Kathy that I realized how much the ADHD was impacting me socially. And that was really hard. And in our relationship, it was kind of like, I felt like the bad guy because I was the one, that was causing all of this.
It's not what I signed up for. I didn't sign up for a marriage impacted by ADHD, and I just had a lot of rage. The more I was vocal and yelled and was angry, the more he withdrew, and he was quiet to begin with. When he would volunteer to do something for me, he'd do the task, which was great because I didn't have to do it, but then he would do it in a way that I wouldn't do, and I thought, he's deliberately sabotaging what he's doing for me, and I thought it was his way of being passive-aggressive.
I found myself nagging all the time about petty stuff, things that frustrated me. But also there were times when I felt like I didn't have her attention, that I couldn't get her attention, that other things were taking her attention. It was very difficult for me to feel like she was being present to me when we were talking, and I'm very sensitive to that. So she was pushing my buttons of feeling dismissed or invisible, or I can't even remember what some of those feelings were. We were having difficulty communicating, and a lot of our communications would escalate into yelling matches and screaming matches, and one of us, usually me, stamping out of the room. And the degree of anger, at least that I was feeling, was a lot more extreme than I had ever felt before. I mean, I can remember feeling, is this going to last?
I think the phrase he heard for 19 years before I left was, "You don't hear me." And what I've discovered is he did hear me. He would just sometimes forget, or he didn't really understand where I was coming from.
Couples make the mistake of thinking that they just need to try harder to improve things, but they don't. They need to try differently, using strategies known to work when ADHD is a factor.
I was in therapy, planning actually to divorce Bill after our youngest went off to college, and started relaying how the problems were reappearing again. And she said, "Has Bill ever been diagnosed with ADD or ADHD?" And I was like, "No." And she said, "I have a book you need to read." And that's when things changed for us.
For me, the biggest surprise is that if you try differently, that you get a different result. I spent so many years flailing in the water, just trying to keep afloat, but never getting anywhere.
One of the main things is now I have a sense of calmness that I didn't have before, because now I understand what it is I'm trying to control. So I've got a set of tools. I have a whiteboard, so I put down what I'm supposed to do each day so that I don't rely on my memory to do it correctly.
You know, I still do some of the things, but I understand a little more about how it impacts Kathy. And she has ways to tell me that don't feel as hurtful to me.
Yeah, I think for us, so much of it was how we were communicating. Because I'm not shy to speak up when I'm feeling invisible or whatever I'm feeling, but I was not saying it in a way that was helpful. So when we're having disagreements now, okay, well, so how can I say that in a way that works for you? And we collaborate in coming up with solutions.
I think too, the doing differently was really important to me too, because I just thought I needed to scream louder and yell louder. And what it did was the opposite. So he would retreat and it would be unpleasant. Who wants to come home to that?
And then, of course, as I changed, it makes it easier for her. Because if I stayed stuck and she tried to change the way she reacts, it wouldn't really work. But this way, we're both working on the situation together, and we both made great strides.
So I think what I've learned most about my wife and is the way in which my ADD was affecting her, particularly in the way in which it caused her to feel unsafe and unheard. And I'm really comfortable with chaos because I've lived with ADD for so long, and for much of my life, I didn't know I had ADD. I just reacted in the moment, and that's how I did things. And I never stopped to consider or watch the impact it was having on her, or quite frankly, other people. For a long time, and I understand why now, but Cheryl didn't really trust me to pull things off. Oftentimes it would be, "Can you handle this?" But then it would get pulled back right away. And she's gotten really good now at knowing when to ask if I need help and when to sort of let me do it my way. Living with ADD and not knowing about it and having your marriage fall apart leaves your confidence pretty shattered. And she's done a tremendous amount of work with me to build that confidence.
I've never been in a relationship where I have felt as comfortable and as relaxed. It's funny that I use the word relaxed because I was not in a relaxed place. We can both speak what we need to speak. We can both express what we're feeling. We can both express what we're looking for in the other person.
We've learned as a couple we're quite resilient. Underneath each other, we like each other.
Yeah.
We really enjoy being with each other, which helps because otherwise there'd be you'd fight and you'd carry the grudge around for days, but we don't do that.
I love being married to a planner.
And I love being married to someone who believes the world is a myriad of opportunities. So we've really come to appreciate each other's strengths, and we play on those strengths. And I've stopped trying to make him me, and he's stopped trying to make me him. And so to me, the joy is that we really appreciate who we each are and who we bring to the table. What I've recognized is that what I saw in the mirror looking back must have been horrible from his eyes. For so many years, all I looked at, what it was doing to me, and it was all about me, and very self-centered, very 6-year-old-ish. And now I look at him and think, wow, look what you had to suffer through, because my reaction was often very unskilled.
I think if you only have the euphoria part and you don't go through the struggles, that you never get there. But by going through struggles, you gain strength.
I think the biggest thing I've learned about my husband is that his behavior, what I perceived to be as negative traits, etc., were not at all intentional or malicious, and that forgetfulness or distractedness, those kinds of things were really not because of me. And we spend a lot of time talking about and laughing about some of the quirks we bring, instead of thinking you're just being intentionally obnoxious or mean or distant, and that's not it at all. And so now we really understand that sometimes it's just either the ADD or certainly I bring issues to the table too, and so we understand now where we come from.
We are definitely loving, and we didn't. That's probably the biggest thing now. We can really enjoy being a loving couple. And that emotion, I think, is now really beginning to sink in for both of us.
We're solid because of who we are and because of what we have come through.
Yeah.
The most important thing is that there is hope. I mean, we turned around a 45-year marriage that was 45 years of suffering because we didn't understand. And so understanding ADHD, its symptoms, how it's manifested, I had to own up to my part in exacerbating the situation, that I just was not responding in a way that was helpful. There is hope.
ADHD does not have to define the individual or the relationship.
I think that now that we work together and we don't see it as flawed individuals, but rather a situation, a condition that we need to learn to cope with and see differently and put on a different set of glasses. And
It feels as if we turned away from each other for a long time, and now we've not only turned back to each other, but we've turned together to face a common enemy, and that's the ADD. It's no longer about my bad behavior or her inability to put up with her husband. It's about, there is this thing and it's hanging in the air, and if we fight it together, we're going to have a great marriage.
Time and time again, I've seen couples who learn these skills surprise even themselves. They end up, like the couples you've just met, with a very special relationship that they treasure all the more for the problems that they overcame. That's worth celebrating. And I genuinely hope that you and your partner will be able to celebrate someday too.
I'm so sorry, I forgot the question.